I'm a fan of all sorts of different genres within video games, but one of my absolute favorites is Metroidvania games. There is just something about the way these games work that really speaks to me. The combat mixed with puzzles and platforming, and you almost always feel as if you're progressing due to all the new abilities and weapons that helps you discover previously unreachable destinations. It's always been one of my favorite genres, and the Nintendo Switch has been knocking it out of the park with great Metroidvania games. Maybe it's because in the last few years, indie developers have really been making some of the best Metroidvania games of all time, and in a way, I would say we are living in the golden age of Metroidvanias. So I decided to compile a list of the top 15 best Metroidvania games available on the Nintendo Switch right now. As always, I'm only choosing one game per franchise for list purposes, and do remember that this is only my personal opinion. So if I don't mention one of your favorites, let me know in the comments below so others can discover those games as well. With that said, let's get right into the video. At number 15, I have Bloodstain Ritual of the Night, which is developed by the legendary Koji Igarashi, the man behind none other than Castlevania. Now, I would have loved to put this game up much higher on the list because it really is a great game, especially fans of the Castlevania franchise, but unfortunately it does suffer from some technical issues on the Nintendo Switch. They, however, have improved it a lot since its launch last year, and I do believe they have one more planned fix, so if you can look beyond the technical issues, Bloodstained is one of the best Metroidvania games on the market right now. Bloodstained has great combat, really good boss encounters with a nice balanced difficulty, a lot of new abilities to discover, and even has some light RPG mechanics to it. And one thing that I really like about Bloodstained is you can customize your character the way you want, which is always an added bonus for me. Cowboy is one of the best looking pixel art games I've ever seen, hands down. I mean, it's just a gorgeous game to look at. It really goes to show you why pixel art has aged so well and is so common to use in video games even now in 2020. But one thing that many people ask, is Cowboy actually fun or is it not? I think with Cowboy you tend to either love it or you hate it. Some people will call it a masterpiece where others just don't see the appeal. It's a very different type of game than you may be used to. The main character is an oddball Cowboy and he does have flaws. He, however, can fly and use this to his advantage, and you can meet new oddball characters to help each other along the way. I think Cowboy is an emotional ride, especially on the story side of things, and I think it has a good and relatable story. And I think it's a fun game overall with different puzzles and all the characters you meet and gain abilities with. WayForward has really been doing a great job with the Shantae franchise overall, and arguably the best one of them yet is Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. The first thing that really stands out about this franchise is the nice, vivid colors and characters, but it's a really fun game as well. Now, this is actually a port of a 3DS game on the Nintendo Switch, and I think that speaks volumes for the high quality of this game, because even though it is a 3DS port, it really stands tall as one of the best Metroidvania games. It doesn't recreate the genre or anything, but it does everything so well, including the platforming and combat, and one thing I really enjoy about this franchise is the charming and witty humor. It's just something that you don't see nearly enough in Metroidvania games. Guacamelee 2 being placed at 12, I think kind of speaks of how many great Metroidvania games there is for the Nintendo Switch. In fact, a lot of people may even consider Guacamelee 2 the absolute best. This is a highly entertaining game with a lot of vibrant colors. There is two things in specific I really like about Guacamelee 2 though. First off is its fun and frantic combat, where it's very fluid and has a nice combo system to it. The other is its challenging platforming, and it is one of the better platforming Metroidvanias on this list. You can even turn into a chicken and unlock even more exclusive abilities. This is a great game all the way through. Yoku's Island Express is actually one of the most unique Metroidvania games on the market. It somehow mixes a platformer Metroidvania with pinball, and if you're like me, you're probably thinking there is no way that would possibly make for a good game, but then when you actually try it, it's really good, and it doesn't feel like anything else because of how unique it is. It also has a really adorable art style to it. You're a little beetle pushing around a ball, and I really can't recommend this one enough. If you want a change of pace in your Metroidvanias, Yoku's Island Express is definitely worth a try. Steamrolled Dig 2 is yet another really unique Metroidvania, where digging is the main mechanic. For some people, Metroidvanias is all about the puzzles, where for others they like the platforming or combat, maybe even the progression system. But for some people, it's all about the exploration, and I think that's what Steamrolled Dig 2 does best. This is a highly detailed world with a lot of things to explore and discover. I really like the attention to detail in Steamrolled, and if you like that steampunk style to it, then you'll really like the art style as well. There is always ways to improve and progress your items and abilities, and it offers a nice gameplay loop. If this does sound like your style of game, then Steamrolled Dig 2 may be just the game for you. Dead Cells is a mix between a Metroidvania and a roguelike game, where not only will you traverse a Metroidvania world, but you also have to fear starting from the very beginning when you die. And I know that sounds like a bad combination, but Dead Cells does pull this off surprisingly well. See, when you play this game, you will find new abilities that you can start over with once you die, and you can find little shortcuts here and there, and the combat is a lot of fun. I think it offers a nice gameplay loop that can be incredibly addicting, and I've even heard people talk about this game as the best independent game available right now. So there is people who hold this game in extremely high regard, and I would recommend playing it as well. If you like 8-bit and 16-bit games, The Messenger is the perfect game for you because it has both. When you first boot up The Messenger, it kind of starts off as a side-scroller, beat-em-up platformer, and it really tricks you into believing that is what The Messenger is, but after you play it for a few hours, it does take a very drastic turn, where it then becomes a Metroidvania by entering gates that can transfer you from the 8-bit to the 16-bit era. It's a very interesting mechanic that can be used to not only change the game artistically, but it can also be used for puzzles, and they do this masterfully. I also really enjoyed the difficulty in this game, and one mechanic that I really liked a lot was the risk-reward mechanic that we have seen popularized by games like Dark Souls, but with its own unique twist. See, when you die in The Messenger, you then are haunted by a little demon that will follow you around and steal all of the currency that you get until it becomes bored and leaves you alone. The Messenger is a really good game though, and I would highly recommend it for retro gamers in specific. Really though, I'd recommend this game to almost anybody. Iconoclast is one of the most interesting Metroidvanias out as of this moment because it almost goes against traditional convention within the genre. It does have that classic Metroidvania style going into it with all the backtracking, but it has a very heavy focus on its story. That's not something that you usually see within this genre, but I think it was done very well here. The characters have a nice, pleasing art style to them, the world has a lot of character to it, and I think the story is highly interesting. It almost felt like I was playing a JRPG at times with how much of a focus it does have on its story. It also does make puzzle solving its priority over combat, and I think actually the combat is possibly its weakest aspect due to having an auto-aim mechanic. It was still good though, and I will say I really enjoyed the boss encounters that often mix puzzle elements in it, so you're always using your brain. So if you like Metroidvanias with a lot of puzzles, stories, and platforming, you will enjoy Iconoclast the most, and it's one of my favorite Metroidvanias out right now. Axial Verge is a love letter to old school Metroidvania games, and I absolutely love this game from the beginning to end. In fact, it's very heavily inspired by the mother of Metroidvania games, Metroid herself. Axial Verge wears its heart on its sleeve, and all in all, it really is Metroid with a different coat of paint. It has a lot of backtracking through a complex map, has a good atmosphere to it, a serviceable story, and a ton of hidden items across the map. The boss encounters are done well, and it has a lot of really interesting weapons, and honestly my only real complaint with this game was that it becomes very easy to get lost in. I know that is always a problem with Metroidvania games, but it seems to me that it was easier to get lost in this game than some of the others on this list. Nonetheless, if you like Metroid, then do yourself a favor and pick up Axial Verge. As a bonus, they also announced that they are developing Axial Verge 2, so keep an eye out for that one as well. Every time I see Monster Boy in the Cursed Kingdom, I fall in love with its vibrant and colorful art style. It has that hand-drawn look to it that kind of reminds me of anime, but the thing about Monster Boy is it's not only a great looking game, but it's just a great game all around. The cool thing about Monster Boy is how the protagonist can transform into different creatures, and as he learns to transform into all these different animals, he then can access new locations. I think because your character itself is what consistently changes, rather than just the weapon, it allows you to look at the game in an entirely new way as you progress. Whereas a frog can dive underwater, a dragon can fly, and there is a number of different transformations to play with, and this also affects the world's puzzles as well as the combat. Monster Boy is a little bit more on the pricey side of things, but it is one of the best Metroidvanias on the market, so I do think this game is absolutely worth it. Cave Story is actually one of my favorite Metroidvanias ever made, so I was really happy to hear about Cave Story Plus coming to the Nintendo Switch, and it does offer some improvements over the original, such as its visuals. This game though grabbed me years and years ago when I first played it, and it still remains as one of the best Metroidvania games on the market, and I know it's an odd thing to say when it comes to games with pixel art, but it's a very atmospheric game for me. It just has this charm to it with all of the characters and how the world is portrayed. I don't think I will ever be able to explain how I feel when I play this game, but it is a pure joy. It does have a nice difficulty to it, but one thing it does excel with is it has multiple different endings. This is one of the reasons that I think you can go back and play this game multiple times and it always feels fresh. If for whatever reason you have yet to play this game, definitely go do so. Super Metroid, none other than the mother of Metroidvania games, makes its way to the number 3 spot on this list. And to many people, this game is the best Metroidvania game ever made. It has helped inspire an incredible genre, and 26 years later, it still holds up incredibly well. And actually, when you look at the art style here, it still looks amazing. Now, this game is not exactly available through conventional means, but rather it's a part of the Super Nintendo Online app, so it does require you to have Nintendo Online. Nonetheless, it's just too good of a game to ignore on this list, and much like Cave Story, Super Metroid is a very atmospheric game where everything feels so lonely and alien. It's just a masterpiece of a game, and it's why we're still talking about it 26 years later. It still surprises me to this day that Xbox allowed Ori and the Blind Forest come to the Nintendo Switch, but I'm overjoyed by this fact. Ori and the Blind Forest, developed by Moon Studios, has become one of the best Metroidvania games ever made. It has a beautiful art style, and possibly the best looking game on this entire list. It has an emotional, heartwarming story, pretty world, top of its class soundtrack, but what it truly excels at is its platforming. I have said this over and over again, but its platforming is hands down the best within this genre, and could even compete with straight up 2D platformers. It really is that good, and it shines when it emphasizes its platforming in things like boss encounters. I really can't recommend Ori and the Blind Forest enough, and in all honesty, I think it's just as good as the number 1 game on this list, but for different reasons. And speaking of the number 1 spot, it goes to none other than Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is almost the exact opposite of Ori and the Blind Forest, where it excels when it comes to combat rather than its platforming. Its world is dark and gloomy, and it takes a lot of inspiration from the Dark Souls franchise. You have benches for save points, a risk-reward mechanic to upgrade your abilities, and the boss designs are possibly the best I've seen in this genre. I love Hollow Knight, and it's not only deserving of the number 1 spot, but it's one of the best games on the entire market. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if I forgot to mention any of your favorite games, make sure to let me know in the comments below, and if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out!